Let's talk about it. Communication is the number one factor in a successful marriage, guys. Let's fucking go. What's going on? My name is Sean. I'm going to be your host here on the Derek's Live today, a podcast for badass parents, and I'm here with my lovely wife and beautiful co-host, Emily. Hey there. Oh, it helps if I unmute you. That would help.
How are you?
I'm good. I like that mute button. I wish that was like, oh, watch that. Oh, hey, how are you? You can't hear her. Those are kind of handy. That's a good in our topic tonight is communication, and I feel like some couples I know would communicate more effectively if they had a mute button. Do you know a couple like that? We want to help you if you're that couple. So stay tuned. We're diving into communication tonight. It's a really important topic. We think it's the most important pillar to a successful marriage. So we saved the best for last on this series. We're excited to get this one tracked out and to you tonight.
So, and we've been working on this one since before we actually had this series. And we just kind of, once we formed the series, this one was like, okay, this is where we end it. This is how we catch everything and put it all together. And we've touched on it in almost every episode. Yeah,
it's been an underlying factor in every episode, and we just haven't really dived into it. But it's really when we think about it, and we've had a lot of conversation around this subject, it's really the thing that we feel like has set our marriage apart from a lot of the marriages that we've been around and the people that we know. It really is the one thing in our life that we feel like we just do really, really well, is we're super, super intentional about communicating.
And I think it's one of the things that sets a healthy marriage and a marriage that lasts apart from a marriage that isn't a healthy and happy marriage and one that ends in divorce.
Well, it keeps your marriage healthy, right? Because most marriages start on a healthy place, and it's a lack of communication usually that makes them unhealthy.
Yeah.
Because you don't communicate, you stop talking about stuff, and before you know it, little things are big things, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
But I think if you're really like just purposeful from the beginning about being like just communicating over the top almost, that it really keeps you in a very healthy place as a couple, and it's worked really, really well for us.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that we're genuinely friendly,
yeah,
and we enjoy each other's company, and we always have.
Yeah, it's really almost an odd factor or a like weird dynamic for us because we've worked together for long periods of our marriage, not the whole time, but we love working together
initially.
And I've met a couple other couples that have done the same thing, but it's not common.
Yeah.
We prefer to spend more time together than we do apart.
Yeah.
And when we spend time apart, we're very eager to get back together. So I think the absence makes the heart grow fonder, right?
Yeah.
So really excited about this one tonight. So, that the first thing that we do is we talk about everything. And so I think you've got to be really purposeful, and you've got to communicate on purpose and really almost with an expectation of communication.
Yeah. So for us, when we talk, we come into it with a sense of expectation of what are we getting from this? How, what do I need to communicate? What am I feeling that I want you to understand? And vice versa. Like, what are you talking about? So we leave the conversation making sure that we understand where both parties are at.
Well, and I think we expect each other to engage in communication too.
Yes, very much so.
We oftentimes have these discussions and listen, sometimes like we we know we need to have a conversation, and sometimes we're not ready to.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we do is we're purposeful to say like, hey, I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. I need just a little bit of time.
Right. It's just processing time. It's not that I'm not going to have a conversation with you. It's just, I'm not ready yet. My brain is still going through the process of everything that's happened and everything that I'm thinking before I can get it out of my mouth.
So I think we have a healthy respect for each other's frame of mind and wanting to have a conversation from a healthy place. And I think that's one of the things that we allow each other to do, is that sometimes your spouse can't have that conversation yet. And listen, not all conversations are those types of conversations either.
The majority of them aren't,
right?
No.
But I think when we do have that need to have just a breather so that we can communicate from a place that's not from anger or hurt or whatever the emotion is we're feeling at that time, we're purposeful to respect each other in that moment.
Well, and I think that has come from all of the tiny little conversations that don't need that breather and that processing. We talk about everything.
Yeah.
Little things, big things, in between things, things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things that matter a whole bunch. We talk about the stars at night. We talk about what color bed sheets.
We almost over communicate on stuff, but it's, like I said, it's allowed us to stay in a really healthy place. And so we have a couple principles that we've not really done on purpose, but they're really things that we've identified throughout our, like when you look at your habits and your trends, like you can identify things that have really been successful. And so we wanted to share these with you on this topic. And the first thing we do is we always talk to each other first, right? Like if there's a major anything or even a little
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we have a win or a loss or a concern
or just a hard day.
Yeah.
The first person, when we get in the car, the first person that we touch base with is each other.
Yeah. Like I look forward to that conversation.
So, and it's been unusual because I thought that was just the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until we kind of got into our 30s and we started having like other adult friends and we became the people that other people would call first.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, doesn't your husband know this?
Well, we'll say like, well, what'd your wife say?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't called. I called you first. Well, what the hell are you calling me for? Call your wife.
Call your spouse.
So.
And that was unusual because we are each other's number one cheerleader on all things.
Yeah.
And so like wins, loses, anything, like we rely on each other to kind of talk through it, to make sense of it, to support us when we need a little extra support, to cheer us on when we're feeling down, and to hold us up. And like, you're the first person I call always.
Yeah. And likewise, it's not really an expectation. It's an anticipation, right? Because like, I want to know like how you feel about it. I want you to be excited or you to be upset with me or you know what I mean? Like it's a shared emotion in things, or I need you to bring the level-headedness or whatever it is. And it's
a balance.
It's a balance. Yeah. So we don't keep secrets from each other. If you've ever said to one of us, hey, but don't tell your spouse that we don't play that. So you got to know that going in, and we're purposeful.
We'll tell
you like, listen, if you tell me something, my wife's going to find out. Yeah. So this isn't like there's not it's a really funny. We had a friend that an awesome coworker that blessed me with us with an amazing Christmas present. And he called Emily trying to get some ideas, and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you, but don't tell Sean. And she's like, no.
Well, and he didn't preface it like it's a Christmas present.
Yeah.
He's just like, hey, I need to tell you something, or I need to ask you something, but you can't tell Sean. I was like, yeah, well, that's not how this works. No offense, but I don't keep secrets from my husband. And then he's like, yeah, but it's a Christmas present. I was like, oh yeah, sorry. Well, I mean, I'm still probably not going to keep a secret, but okay. So, but we've had that conversation with numerous people. Like if somebody has come to us and said, oh, well, I have something I'm going to tell you. I'm like, okay, just so you understand, if you're telling me, you're telling my spouse, you're telling Sean, and we don't expect it to go any further than that. Like we're not going to go and share your secrets on our podcast unless you want us to, but we don't keep secrets from each other about anything. Not about each other. So if somebody has said something about my husband, I will tell my husband that thing.
Yeah.
And we tell it in love. We're not trying to like tear our spouse down, but we do it to protect each other. That I'm not holding something above your head as a token to keep you in line. Like, that's just not how this works.
Yeah.
It also makes Christmas fun because we've set that expectation. We're really bad at keeping secrets in general now.
I think it's part of like our excitement too, that we really do enjoy, like, we're both like gift givers in a small sense. I don't think it's either of our really love languages, but we enjoy, I think, making each other happy so much that it's so hard to keep gift secrets. So hard.
So I got my birthday presents, multiple, plural, early because they arrived in the mail and they were too big to hide.
I was like, I can't hide them. And happy birthday.
Happy birthday. So super excited about birthday presents.
Emily's going to be a little bit closer to, well, I won't say the number. January, she's got a birthday coming up next week. She's going to be a little old.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. Not a little.
We're still rounding to the same place. I haven't gone over a precipice. We're still rounding to the next number. So it's still a medium, intermediate number.
Make sure you drop Emily a happy birthday note this week in the episode notes. Yeah. She's feeling it. We're going on a cruise. It's really exciting. We've got a 5-day cruise booked. We're leaving Saturday. And by the time you listen to this, we'll already be on the boat because this episode comes out the following Wednesday. So we're going to be shooting some bonus content this week from the boat and excited about that. So stay tuned to us social media later in the week as that comes out. Maybe we'll release this episode on Monday just so that people will get it and know that we're on vacation and they're not. So we're going to release this episode. Happy Emily's birthday, early episode release. Now you get to listen to it on Monday.
There you go.
So if you're listening to this early, you know why. We're on a boat. We're in Mexico. Peace. We love you.
But our next principle is that we basically stay on the same page about everything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've watched so many sitcoms and it's like the kid asking mom something and mom says no. And they're like, well, I'll just go ask dad.
Oh, well, they try to pitch you against each other, don't they?
And they're good at it.
Oh,
it comes so natural. And
you'd think it's the teenagers that are the worst, but it's the little ones. And you got to watch the fucking little ones.
Yeah.
It's not the teenagers. It's definitely the little ones. But our response when any of our kids ask us a question is, I don't know, let me talk to your mom, or I don't know, let me talk to your dad. And like, it's never like if we've got something going on, it's never like, yeah. And then we have to explain that decision to the other spouse.
And that was something very intentional that we did when we adopted our big kids, that we sat down and had that conversation beforehand and said, listen, we need to make sure that we are always on the same page. I don't ever want our kids to pit us against each other. And part of that was from learned experience because I was really good at doing that to my parents. Really good. But I also know that in a healthy family, it starts with a healthy marriage. And I want us to set a good example for all of our children. And I think that set a really healthy expectation for all of our big kids, and our little kids are coming up, you know, in that line, knowing that we're not apart, that everything that we decide is because we've talked to each other.
100%.
So, but it's also kind of touchy because it really is about everything. It's not just about what the kids say, but it's about what our family says about our parents. So there have been times that our family or our parents have asked us something and they're like, well, he'll probably just say yes. So just go ahead and plan for it. I'm like, yeah, no, we'll have a conversation and I'll let you know. Yeah.
I mean, it's in everything. If we're making plans for the family or plans to go do something on our own, or it doesn't matter. It's, I don't know, let me talk to, you know, my wife and let me make sure we ain't got nothing going on and we'll make a decision. I'll let you know.
And it's little things and big things. It's, you know, oh, okay. Do you want to go out to dinner? Probably. Let me make sure it's okay with my husband. Yeah. And it, you know, we don't ever make any plans unless the other person knows what's going on. So that's just kind of become a standard. and it set a healthy expectation so that we're never overstretched. And this is something that we kind of really didn't touch on, but I think that it helps bring balance, that I'm not always saying yes to a million things.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, we already have a commitment. Let's not overdo it. And so it brings balance because we have each other to kind of weigh that stuff out. Like, I think that we have enough on our plate without committing to another thing.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes like one of us is just not feeling it,
yeah.
you know, and we need to stay in tune with those things. So the other thing we do is we're super intentional to share each other's wins and losses.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're happy together and we're sad together, and we encourage each other, and we bring each other back down to reality when we need to. But we always share whatever emotion we got going on. So.
And that comes back to those car conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know, Sean is in sales, so he travels a lot, and a lot of times he's on the road. And so it's that phone conversation. Hey, I'm on my way home, or I'm on my way to this next appointment. And it's, how'd it go? Talk me through it. What worked well, what didn't. And it's bringing the calm, I think, back to certain emotional places. Mm-hmm. And likewise, and there are days that it's absolute chaos. And so he's very quick, like, well, what went really good today? He's like, I know some things went crazy, but what was one thing that went well? Tell me about this, or tell me, Brianna said she did really good in reading. Tell me about that. Yeah. And so you really do bring the balance for me, because I think a lot of times as a mom in general, but especially a stay-at-home mom, it's really to get caught up in all of the nonsense and the chaos, and the kitchen's not clean, and dinner's still late, and the toddler's running around with no pants on because she's potty training. And like, my mind is in a million places, and I don't always remember to see the good in every moment. And so having those conversations helps me see, and one good thing always leads to two good things. Yeah. And two good things always leads to three good things. Oh, this happened. Oh, and this happened. And so it helps really make sense and bring health to a world of chaos.
Well, and I mean, I think we're super intentional about talking. Yeah. And we carve out time on purpose to have conversation. A lot of times, especially if, like you said, if I'm just driving and we talk on the phone, or if we're in the car together, we have a lot of conversations one-on-one in the car. But I think that bedtime session is really important for us. We when we crawl into bed tonight, we're always intentional to have a conversation. No TV, whatever else we got going on, we tune the world out, and we usually talk for, even if it's just a 2 or 3 minute, like, hey, anything on your mind, we kind of just touch base, and it's a really important point of our day for us.
Well, and I think the 2 minutes at the end of the day is successful because we've had 15 2-minute conversations throughout the day. And I know on days that you've been really busy and I don't get those several 2-minute conversations in, that when I get your attention, I take 10 or 15 minutes, and vice versa, that it allows us to kind of vent and walk through the things that have happened.
Yeah. And I think, like, we're probably getting a little deep, but I want to kind of get into that because it's really important to understand where your spouse is at in their communication. And like, there's days that Emily knows that I'm just baked when I walk in the door, and I just don't have a 30-minute conversation in me. Yeah. But there's also days that I come home and I know that she's baked. She's had a hard day with the kids and she's wiped, and I need to give her my undivided attention so that she can have an adult conversation and get the emotion that she's feeling out of her, and vent. And so you've got to really be in tune during that purposeful time together to understand what you need from each other in that moment.
And I think that has come from learning about each other and knowing each other. And that happens in a marriage when you spend quality time, intentional time.
It's definitely a developed skill, I think, because you've got to become familiar with one another. And it's something to get better at, but you've got to be intentional about it.
So, and it takes practice.
Yeah.
You have to want to do it, and you have to practice it. And it might not come natural, and it might not go well at first. I think back to when we were living in the apartment in Gainesville, like many
way back when,
eons ago. And like how I think we struggled to find how to communicate with each other. But we just did it all the time because we didn't have anything else to do. We didn't have a lot of money, and we spent a lot of time.
Ramen noodle days.
But we worked together, so we were always together, and it kind of forced us to kind of confide in each other and to learn how each other talked. And we would spend like a peek into our lives. Like, we didn't have cable, and this was before the internet had like Netflix and all that. So like, we didn't have TV to watch because we literally couldn't afford it. So literally we would sit and just talk.
Yeah.
And it was messy, and sometimes it was really stupid because we were teenagers. But like, I think that really set the foundation for us being able to have deeper conversations now.
You know, I never thought about that, but I think you're right. Those days that we just, because really, I mean, when we were still dating, we hadn't even gotten married yet.
We were engaged, but that was it.
Yeah, I took a job in Gainesville, and we relocated up here against a lot of people's wishes. and we didn't know anybody, so we really just locked ourselves in an apartment for a year. And I mean, we talked and we did some other unholy stuff, but it's amazing that a bunch of babies didn't come out of that mess. But here we are nonetheless.
With a bunch of babies.
With a bunch of babies. much later on in life, might I add. Much later on. But yeah, I mean, I think that you choose to be friends first.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's not first because we fell in love and then we became friends. But I think we fell in love because we're so friendly. I don't know.
Well, and I think because we've developed that friendship, that intimacy, that we confide in each other. We tell each other our secrets, our hopes, our dreams, the desires of our heart, and we hold and we cherish each other's secrets almost to a point that it becomes a treasure that we share with each other.
Well, I think like it's almost like that best friend relationship, right? Yeah. And you've got that best friend that you had in school that you've stayed in touch with your whole life, and you look forward to talking with them. But I feel like that's who you are for me. And I honestly, I know couples who don't operate that way, and I just don't understand it because, and if what works for you is whatever works for you, but
I would challenge to ask, is it working? So, that's the question that I think that you need to ask, because still being married and being in a healthy, happy marriage is not the same thing.
And you're right. It's 100% correct.
So, I would challenge that if you're not friends with your spouse, if you don't have a lot of communication, to really examine where you're at. Is it healthy?
Well, and I think one of the things that you have to really identify is, are you communicating not effectively, but I think healthy? Like, you should be protecting each other with your communication, right?
Very much so.
I think we get into this place where we think that arguing is communicating, and that's not communicating. Yeah. You should be able to have a grown-up conversation with your spouse without confrontation.
And you can disagree and still not have confrontation.
Confrontation, absolutely. And I think this is really a trend overall. It's not just a marriage problem. It's a world problem. Yeah. I think if we could all get to a place that we could have a mature conversation about shit and not just yell and scream at each other, that we'd be a lot better off. But it just seems like every time somebody disagrees with you, you just have to raise your voice and just be loud. And it's a tendency that I think everybody's guilty of at some point. I have been, guilty as charged. And I think as we strive to be the best version of ourselves, that we have to get that under control. And I know I'm a lot better now than I was a year ago at holding my patience with conversation in general. But I think like you have to be non-negotiable in that with your spouse. Like there can't be that aggression or anger in your communication. And quite the opposite. It should be very like protective and empathetic towards each other. And towards other people when you're talking with your spouse. I mean, we don't talk down about each other anywhere, with friends, with family, with our children. We're very purposeful to guard each other in everything.
And the husband bashing, and then we saw this a lot on TikTok and like,
oh, it's all over social media. There's all kinds of like these.
I'm gonna divorce my husband because he didn't put the toilet seat down. And it's so you're going through and listing all of the things that your spouse does wrong and never taking the time. Like, okay, you've named 6 things that are inconsequential in every aspect, and you haven't named one thing that your spouse does to support you and and like it just doesn't add value. And so as you were saying that about, communication in general with the populace, like I think that if we really took the time to have a calm, level-headed conversation, that we would realize that we're really not that different, and that our goals really are much closer than we realized. Yeah. And in marriage, that has held true, that at the end of the day, when we had a conversation or we had a disagreement, by the time we actually got to the final point of what we were talking about, we realized that we really wanted the same thing. Yeah. We just thought of a different way to get there. And so it was really easy, like, oh, we both want the same end result. Okay, this is the quickest way from A to B. Yeah. And it took the confrontation, the argument, really, it settled it very, very quickly. I think that would be a huge thing in general. And, anytime you talk politics, I think if you really came down to the root of it, you're really not that far off from each other. We've just taken sides and we just get loud and we don't ever take the time to see where the other person's at.
Yeah.
But we, one of our principles, and we didn't really put that in the right place, but we don't talk trash behind each other's back, not with our family, not with our kids.
Well, it's just being protective with each other, right? Like we really do guard each other
with everything.
Yeah.
So, and when someone says something negative about you or about me, we are both very quick to confront that and like, hey, we're not going to do that. We're not going to talk like that, and put it in its place.
And I think we're also pretty purposeful not to complain to other people about one another. Yes. And I think like we're not perfect in that. Like I think we've definitely fallen short at one or two times. But I think when we do fall short, we identify it and we tell each other like, hey, I messed up on this. Like, so we're very purposeful to guard each other, but we also don't sweep stuff under the rug. We don't just let stuff build and grow. And we really do just try to face it head on all the time.
And again, it's purposeful. And not just stuff about our marriage. It's not just stuff that you do that drives me crazy. And it's not just stuff that's going on in our household that drives me crazy. It's recognizing stuff that's in the world or stuff that's in our jobs or stuff that's going on in our community, that if it's bothering me and I need to process it, or if you need to process it, we try and bring it to a head so that it doesn't add stress where we don't need stress.
Yeah.
And so we've had deep conversations about religion, about politics, about stuff going on in our community, about violence, about our children, anything and it's every little thing. And we just take the time to have this conversation like, hey, I saw this on the news and I'm having a hard time understanding it or processing it.
Well, I think all that stuff aside, we really just try to stay in tune with each other and what we're feeling and our frustrations and our happiness. And I think sometimes even when we fail individually to address it, we're very purposeful to call each other when we start to kind of see or sense that there's something off with the other person.
Yeah. If it's been quiet for a few more minutes than normal, we're like, hey, is everything okay? Is there something you want to talk about? Is there something on your mind? And we don't just ask one time. We ask a couple of times. And we're waiting for either like, yes, this is what's going on, or I'm not ready to process it.
I think what's really funny is like if we ask, we know.
Yeah.
Right. Know. Like if we're so in tune with each other's body language and demeanor and the way that we say things. It's just like, no, you're a liar. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I can tell by the way he puts his backpack down from work where he's at. Like it's that obvious.
So I think like for you newlyweds out there, it might be kind of weird for you, but as you age with your spouse and the longer you're together, it's really hard to bullshit each other.
Yeah.
You know, and so we really just don't even try to bullshit each other anymore because we know that they're going to call. Like, I know you're going to call me on it and you know I'm going to call you on it. So why lie?
Well, and I don't even think it's necessarily lying as so much as just ignoring it.
Yeah.
I think that what we've seen in a lot of the counseling that we've done, unfortunately, is like, yeah, I saw there was a problem, but I just left it alone.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks went by, 6 months went by, 2 years went by. And I knew there was a problem 2 years ago, but it was just easier to keep going than to face that or to talk about that. Or I didn't think it was really that big of an issue. And I figured he'd just handle it or she would just handle it.
Yeah.
And all of this while it's like a tumor and it starts off really little. And before you know it, it's spread everywhere. And we just don't let that happen. We recognize like, hey, something's up.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about? And it's been funny because we've kind of, sometimes when one of us is struggling to communicate, we like lead into a conversation like, hey, I've had a really hard time with this, blah, 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 blah. Do you have anything to add? Do you have any like common feelings about something?
And we know what each other's doing. I'm like, listen, you're not slick. And you think you're slick. You're not slick.
Like, I know I'm not slick. Let's talk about this.
Yeah. So we just, but to that point, like you've got to have fun sometimes, even in the discomfort, right? And so when she's being stubborn and she don't want to talk about it, she gets tickled. She's got this little spot.
And we don't need to talk about where the spot is. Don't need random strangers coming up and tickling me in public.
All right. That's fair. But she's got this spot and I like to exploit the spot. And so if she's giving me a hard time and she's just being a jerk and doesn't want to talk about it, she has to pay the price.
And likewise, like his spot is not as obvious and it takes a little more, but it's like, and ladies, secret weapon, take your clothes off. He'll say whatever you want him to say. Just take your clothes off. Argue naked. It will make everything better. Argue naked.
I'm upset now.
YouTube will kick us off.
Yeah, they will. It might be fun though. Never mind. All right. So we want to leave you guys with some best practices. So, I think that the biggest takeaway is that you've got to just be purposeful about it. You have to do this on purpose.
Yes.
And so decide to do it on purpose. But I think there's some things you can identify in your communication that they're really cool. And so one of the things you have to understand is sometimes you have like decisions that you need to make and sometimes you guys need to support each other, right? And so when you're supporting each other, I think one of the things we've adopted that has worked really well for us is,
do you need me to fix it or do you need me to listen?
Yeah, right. And so if Emily will start, come home and she's venting and she's had a crap day and she's just unloading, I'll stop her. Or I'll let her do her thing. And when she's done, I'll be like, all right, do you just want to talk about this or do you need me to give you some advice?
Yeah.
You need me to fix this for you? What do you need from me? Because I can do whatever you want, but sometimes your spouse doesn't want your input.
Well, and sometimes I've already fixed it.
Yeah.
I just need to talk it through.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to get off your chest.
Yeah.
And likewise, sometimes you just need to be able to say and verbalize your emotions so that you can think through it. I know I do sometimes,
Let me just talk through this because I don't know the next step. But sometimes if I just say it, the next step becomes very much more apparent.
Like you ever like asked a question out loud, and as you're saying it, you're like, oh shit, the answer is like so obvious,
that's
you
the
know?
answer.
And so sometimes your spouse just needs you to be that sounding board for them, but sometimes they need your support too. Make sure you're giving it to them if they want it or need it. So ask them.
And we use that question specifically. Do you need me to fix it, or do you need me to listen? And it's not confrontational. It's not him degrading me. It's, I don't know exactly what you need from me in this moment. Help me see that. And it took us a couple of years to figure that out, because there were times that I would just vent and you're like, okay, well, you vented about all of these things. Let me go and change X, Y, Z. And I'm like, no, why did you do that? That was dumb. I don't need you to rearrange the kitchen. I was just venting that the cabinets are stupid. Please don't move my dishes.
Whatever.
But it's silly things like that sometimes I'm a short person. I'm 5'2" on a good day. And sometimes it's hard to reach. And it's like, I don't need you to move the cabinet. Sometimes I just want to bitch about being short. But it's little things and big things. Sometimes it's a big issue, and I do need your help. I don't know the next step, and I need you to kind of walk me through it. Or I've tried and tried and tried it, and I don't know how to do it. How can you help support me? And let's make a decision together. For sure.
And the second thing is, remember to talk to your spouse before you commit to stuff, like, and just in general.
In general, yeah.
And so one of our favorite sayings is like, I don't know, let me talk to M and I'll get back to you.
And that's with our kids. That's when we plan family outings. It's when we plan even individual time. Like there are nights that I go and do, and there are nights that he goes and hangs out with his friends. But we don't ever plan that until we've talked to one another to make sure.
Yeah, right. Because like, look, I'm a horrible schedule keeper, and like I need to make sure, like, hey, look, what else are we committed to? Right. Because sometimes we're committed to stuff that I forget about, and likewise, sometimes, you know, I've committed or we have a commitment, and you forget about something, and so it's just being on the same page. And you know, we're moving together as a family unit, and there's 6 of us in the house, and decisions affect a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts to a family, and you need to be on the same page as your spouse. So adopt that saying. I don't know. Let me talk to my spouse, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know. I'm not saying no, but let me make sure that we're both on the same page, and I'll let you know.
So, and our final best practice that what we would encourage everyone to do is plan out a non-negotiable time to talk. To go through the day, to go through the highs, the lows.
And this is a daily thing.
It's
every day. You're not just coming together once a week. And, you know, if you've got, you know, if you travel a lot, maybe you work and you're out of town and your spouse is in town, it can be a phone call, whatever it is, but plan out a 10 or even if it's just 5 minutes, whatever it looks like for you, plan out some time to get on the same page and in tune with whatever's going on with one another. And put your phone down and be purposeful to give your spouse all of your attention during that time.
So, and if you do travel, take the advantage of technology. As you grow and you learn your spouse, you'll learn their voice cues. But if you're younger in your marriage, use Zoom so you can see their face, where you can see their eyes.
FaceTime or whatever.
FaceTime, whatever that looks like. Use something visual. If you're not together every night, that's a really useful tool to help really understand the facial expressions and what your spouse is actually going through. And eye connection is a lot in communication. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect on like a FaceTime, but it's way better than just a phone call or avoiding it altogether.
Yeah.
So
and for us, that's a nightly session that, you know, when we get in bed, like we said earlier, we're purposeful to have that conversation before bedtime every night. And then we also make a lot of time when we're in the car together. If we're going somewhere, we usually use that time to have conversations and stuff. So, but just find some time that works for you and carve that out and make sure you're using it. So
we love you guys.
Yeah. So before we go though, I want to encourage you to make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you hit that share button. That helps us get other listeners, and leave a 5-star review. We've got a new group coming. It's you can join the Facebook group. It's linked through the Facebook page. It's Above Average Parenting. So jump on and join the Facebook group and join us in there. We'll probably be going live, maybe from the boat. We did the upgraded internet package this week, so maybe we'll be able to get a live in from the boat this week.
Yeah. Sean went and found like little clip-on Bluetooth mics, and we're going to be set.
Yeah, we're looking forward to get some content for you from the ocean, and it'll be good. We're excited about our cruise. So thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Fuck your excuses.
Jesus fucking loves you. Have a good night, guys.